Do you have food? Are you sleeping outside? Do you have food?
I
So
do,
what?
yeah.
You're stress? You're supposed to be under stress.
These elites are basically
These
enjoying
elites.
our
These
suffering.
elites. Oh, these
They
elites.
take pleasure
That's
from
what I
like
would
our
die
suffering.
for. But as an American, if you say to me, does Putin affect your life? Biden says, oh, NATO will have to fight him next. Have they ever said that? Have they ever said anything that they're wrong, that they made mistakes? No, because they're never wrong. Because they'd rather lie and change the truth. The Japanese, they put a sword in their stomach. Okay? That's what Americans used to do. If you lied like that, someone would challenge you to a duel and shoot you and kill you.
Hey, Howie, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, I'm good. How are you, Nikos? How's everything?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm hustling, you know what it's like.
I hear you. I hear you.
Serfdom. I'm enjoying my serfdom. Sort of Nikos.
Yeah, I know, man. Like when you invited me on to talk today, and I thought about, well, what's on my mind, what's recent both in my life and in, what I see going on around me. And, you know, if you look at the top of the pyramid, right? So what's the top of the pyramid? The WEF, the World Economic Forum, right? That's the kingpin, right? There's nothing really above that. Yeah, they could have the Illuminati above it or whatever, or, I don't want to get involved with that. I'm just going to talk about what we can see. I'm not going to talk about what we can't see. I know what we can see. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what we can't see. I'm not going to guess that. But what we can see is that below the WEF are all these leaders of most of the European nations. And I don't know if Joe Biden was fancy enough to be picked into their group, but the people who are his minion, who really sort of control him. And we've never had a president like Biden that I can remember. I mean, he was always known as someone who was not very bright. He was known that his whole career. He was a showman. He was a big mouth. He was from a small state with a lot of military bases. So he was and near New York City, near Washington, D.C. And, over the years, he was there for so long, he really just insinuated himself in the power structure. And he really is one of the original members of the Uniparty. When we talk about the Uniparty, where does it stem from? I mean, it stems from sort of the Clinton, Bush, Obama, sort of into, Trump obviously breaks that up, and we can get into him later. I'm sure, he certainly is a big topic in the news. But, during those years, there was a clique of senators. And I think I wrote a column in LinkedIn about this not long ago, that a buddy of mine's wife went to Yale Law School with, and I'm not going to mention the senator's name, but like with a senior senator who was one of the original Uniparty members. He was a Democrat who was friends with Republicans. And you put Biden in there, you put people like Mitch McConnell, you put people like Charles Grassley. So you have senior senators from both parties, and they're very respected within their party because they've been there for so long. They're now starting to leave. But that's really where the Uniparty came from. And the WEF really sort of picked up on that. And going on in Europe at the time was the whole EU single currency euphoria that came out of the 90s, came during the Clinton years. And plus, the wall came down. Russia was done. We were at peace. We were going to demilitarize, and the world was going to be just this incredibly groovy place. And the 90s were sort of like my heyday in a lot of ways. I mean, I really had a great time over 30 years or 40 years even. But in terms of my career, well, that's not really true. The first 5 years of 2000 were very good too. But, just getting back to the Uniparty and the WEF and where things stand, what these people have decided is that they are superheroes, that they're there to help you. You're a little people. And what you need is a little life. What should your little life consist of? You should have a small apartment. You could have, a rented car or a small car or, no car. You shouldn't eat meat. Maybe you have it once a week. Maybe we don't let you have it at all. It's up to us.
Have you tried
We're still gonna have
plant-based like meat?
Huh?
Have you tried those plant-based meats that are out, like the plant-based meat slices and
I'm
then the
a whole
plant-based
food.
is
I'm a whole foods person. I happen to eat a fair amount of veggies and fish. I do not eat a lot of meat. I eat probably under a pound of all meat a week, and then I maybe eat another pound or two of poultry, and then the rest is fish and fruits and veggies and pasta and things. So, but
that
it's
that
not.
meat is so disgusting, man. That meat, anything
I
that's
can't
like,
eat. I
do
won't.
not
I
buy
won't try.
anything that tries to
I won't.
pretend to be meat. It is, yeah.
Well, you know what it's like? It's like the thing. It's like so when I worked on Wall Street, it was a different world. People were much more sharp elbowed. It was much more an open field. It was much easier for people to make money at different levels. And the markets went up and down, stocks went up and down. And then what happened was during the period where I stopped trading, the quantitative traders and the program traders, which were different, but they both used computers for their trading. One was purely technical. The other was supposed to be based on various metrics. But the quantitative traders began to skew things so that in the end, they and the programs sort of work together instead of against each other. So what they could do is make tremendous waves. And by making tremendous waves, they could get retail to follow them, which is always the big institutional trade is you want to buy something, and then you want other institutions to buy it, and then you want retail to buy it, and then you want to sell it. I mean, the really crude version of that is called the pump and dump. But, in a more sophisticated way, it's just like a never-ending bull market euphoria fed by low-fed interest rates, which encourages speculation. And basically, our whole economy is based on speculation at this
Do you
point.
think that if we remove the stock market, the world would be a better place? Because
I do.
basically,
I do. I think it's outdated. No, I believe in AI. I think, I'm going to tell you something. I have very rarely changed my opinion on anyone or anything. I don't. I'm usually right. My first impression is usually my right impression. But in this instance, I want to say to you, and it really is almost based on what I'm seeing, what he did today. I'm revisiting Elon, not as a businessman, because I don't think he's that great. As a hustler and a promoter, he's the greatest of all time, bar none. P.T. Barnum, nothing. Elon Musk, his dog, remember Dogecoin? Now he got that thing to go from 1 cent to like $100. He's the maestro. There's no one better. He made Tesla that way. Now he really can't make another car. People don't seem to mind yet. I think it's funny. But he really may be somebody on the good guy's side. Today, I don't know if you saw in the news, they said that he's suing OpenAI
yeah, I saw that. That's good.
of Microsoft. You go, buddy. You go, Elon. Look at that guy. Elon. Yeah. Stand up for the people, buddy. But and although Elon is trying to be more of a Buddhist, like he lives in a small house, still flies in his big fancy private jet and goes to every fancy party he can get invited to, but we'll forget about that for now. But that type of elitism is what drives the WEF universe, because the pinnacle of that universe is the cocktail hour, the catered affair, the speeches by luminaries, and it's that kind of like Fred Flintstone and his lodge, like the Grand Poobah. And it's pure hive thinking. That's what this is. That's what this war is. And I'm really ready to get into it. It is a war. I'm like, game on. I'm here. I'm ready to fight. But this hive mentality that really stems back from the original religion, right? So before there was Judaism, what's the first religion? And it's Zoroastrianism from Iran. Zoroaster, or as Nietzsche called him, Zarathustra. He's the basis of his original work, Thus Spoke Zarathustra. But what Zarathustra or Zoroaster basically said was that there are two forces in the universe that are in conflict, sort of like God and Satan in the Old Testament. And if you look at the original with Abraham, and remember Abraham, and I know that you're very aware of this figure as well because he's very important in Christianity, but Prince Melchizedek, okay? Prince Melchizedek is a priest of God before Abraham. How could that be? If Abraham sort of invented God or discovered God, how could they be a priest of God already?
He
The
was
answer
Jesus
is
incarnate, we believe. Pretty much.
exactly. And again, I'm not commenting on that. I'm not saying I don't pretend to know about how reincarnation works or who the Mahatma is or the seventh Mahadi and I'm not saying that's true or not. I don't know. I mean, that's like mystical things that have been foretold. Is it true foretelling or false foretelling? I mean, right now, obviously, it looks pretty good. I mean, things are lining up. I mean, if you look at Fatima, right? So, one of the events that happened in modern times that has most intrigued and puzzled scholars and the Vatican is what happened in Fatima in I think it was 1918, where the Virgin appeared to hundreds of people, thousands of people over weeks. It wasn't like, oh, I saw it, I saw it. No, everybody saw it. People came. I don't think you could film it. And I think it may have been right before that era where they could film it. I don't know what happened. But there were three prophecies of Fatima. And the first one was bind Russia to the Sacred Heart. And if you remember about 5 years ago, there was talks of reuniting Roman Catholicism with Russian Orthodoxism. Wouldn't that have been great? Wouldn't it be amazing if we could have had peace? If we could have had a world without this antagonism? I'm not saying that would have made the peace, but to me, I'm a peace, says on my LinkedIn profile, I'm a peace advocate. I don't want to see fighting. And if I do see fighting, I want to see evil being fought. Okay, not young people. Okay, the idea that all these young people that are fighting in Ukraine or that are getting killed in Palestine or Israel, the idea that these are all terrorists or evil people, that's ridiculous. I'll tell you, for every evil person you kill, you're killing 10 innocent people, 10 people that don't want to be there, that don't want to have a gun in their hand, that never wanted to be part of this. And that's what makes me angry, is that there are some people who claim, oh, everyone's life matters, and then they take, and look, and there's a backlash in this country going on right now between the whole woke movement and elevating certain people above other people. I mean, it's just outrageous. It's intolerable, and it's not going to be tolerated. And I'll say right now the magic words. Thank God for Donald Trump, really, because he could stand up to them. He did, and in 2016, he backed down. He backed down because, he was happy to be president. He
I
wanted
thought you were
peace.
like a Democrat living in New York. You wouldn't like Trump.
No, I was a Republican pretty much. I'm not exactly. I'm like an anarcho-syndicalist, which is like a mixture of extreme right and extreme left. But I'm a character. But I really, since I grew up with Ronald Reagan from when I was 13 to 21, and I thought he was just awesome. And the fact that people thought he was stupid and just an actor, which is funny, ironic, because now actors are incredibly geniuses. Joe Biden told me that I'm a Neanderthal if I don't believe that climate change is going to be disastrous in 2030. Joe Biden, guy who couldn't graduate from college, who had to cheat his way to graduate. Okay. I mean, that's just outrageous for someone like him to speak like that.
That's really stupid language to use, man. Just
I'm on the bully pulpit. I'm on the bully pulpit, because that's what it's called. Being the president is you're in the bully pulpit. So you're supposed to give like moral messaging. And it's just like, dude, what moral messaging do you have? Your son's an influence peddler. Your brother's an influence peddler. It seems like you got paid off for it too. Whether you screwed those guys, Biden's would say is this. Here's what Biden's excuse is basically. Those guys are suckers. Yeah. I said you could speak to Joe, and they thought they'd have influence, but they just gave me a lot of money and they didn't get influence. Of course, we know that's not true because of what happened in Ukraine and with China. So we know that's not really true, but that's their story, at least in terms of what they say. I mean, they can't deny that they both collect a lot of money for being lobbyists or influence peddlers. But the Democratic Party is a party of lawyers. That's really what it is, right? The Democratic Party is a party full of attorneys. And what attorneys want to do basically is live in a world that's very sophisticated. And you'll say, well, sophistication sounds good. Well, hold on. What's the basis of the word sophistication? Sophistry. Sophistry. Okay. Plato spoke against sophistry. Jesus spoke against sophistry. People who would just all talk and no action. People that say fine words, but they have no meaning. It's just to be eloquent, but it's not to have any force of ethics or reason behind it. And that's the basis of law in the United States and in the UK. I'm not really an expert on the legal codes of other countries, but in the US and the UK, the basis of the law is just to make a contest. And it's just to make it as fair as you can, as to the extent that you know the rules and you either can, you can't break them, but you can bend them. And that's something I wanted to talk to you about. One of the things that I've changed my mind about the most that I want to share with you, and I want to hear your opinion on, is what happened during the election of 2020. It's not that I've completely changed my mind. It's just nuanced over time and with how things have worked out and what I think actually happened. So at the time, and again, I thought, I mean, elections in the United States don't have to be fair, and there's cheating. There's a lot of cheating in them. It's just that there's ways that you can go about that, in the sense that there's a system designed for you to protest, but then there's a system of oversight, and that oversight is what it is. And if you lose your protest, you lost your protest. And that was kind of the way I thought in 2020. I said, the Democrats are very good at cheating. They've got all types of, maneuvers and bells. And if the whole establishment has fallen in lockstep behind them, then that's okay with me. And I supported Biden. I was mad at Trump over COVID. And then I also thought that the economy after COVID was going to need a lot of stimulus. And I didn't realize it was going to go this crazy, and maybe Trump would have done that. I don't know. Not when I look back, I wish Trump had stayed president, really. But I think if he had, we wouldn't have these wars right now, which are killing so many people. And it just breaks my heart. And at the same time, January 6th happened, which is when the FBI and CIA made a lot of instigation, and Trump acted like an idiot because he didn't want to accept the process, which was stupid. And I'd still disagree with Trump. I don't think it's criminal necessarily, because I don't think what these guys really did was criminal. I mean, first of all, they weren't armed. It's not an insurrection if you don't have a gun. Okay. America's an armed country. Republicans are armed people. Okay. There's a real fucking insurrection, pardon my French. People are going to be there with guns and weapons. And I didn't see any of that. So right off the bat, I have a little bit of a problem. Okay. The fact that they were very angry and they wanted to sort of get involved with Congress people, they should be arrested for, of course. I agree with that. But the amount of people they arrested and the extent of the punishment that they've given these people is startling, and it's draconian, and it's wrong. Just like what they're doing with Julian Assange, it's wrong. It's morally wrong. Our country that was formed on this idea that we were going to be morally right has become a terribly wrong place, being run by Democratic lawyers. Okay. And it's time. And like I said, Trump came in the first time, and it's like the old saying goes, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. And believe me, Trump is nobody's fool. He's not going to make the same mistake. He can. So I don't see how he can lose. That's the other thing I would want to mention to you, is that I think it's going to be a landslide, because what's going to happen between now and then is inflation is going to be stubborn and the economy is going to start to weaken. But I don't think the Fed's going to be able to do that much about it. I think that when the election happens, the economy is at best going to be lukewarm. The migrant issue is the number one issue right now, which in polls, which Trump dominates, and dominates that issue. Trump dominates the immigration issue. And I mean, Biden is polling like 25% of Americans think he thinks he's good for the economy. You don't win an election with those numbers. And you know what? You don't carry a ticket with those numbers. I don't care about some isolated election in Long Island or some special election in Alabama that the Democrats will. I mean, a lot of the Democratic pollsters actually aren't optimistic, and I respect them. Like Nate Silver, who I thought in the past has been sort of like a Democratic hack, has actually become rather independent. So I'm interested to read what he says as this election season goes on. What's your perception there in Europe? What do you guys think about the election?
Well, me and some moderate friends think that the 2020 election was some dodgy stuff going on, but I wasn't there, so I can't. I wasn't in all locations, so I'm just dealing with secondhand knowledge, which is what always the case with those kind of things. Um, yeah, I don't know. We in Ukraine, we think that Biden's better for Ukraine. We're just not looking forward to Trump coming back to power.
I don't know if that's true or not. I think that there's two sides to that, but I hear what you're saying. I understand. Look, if you guys want to fight on until victory or defeat, and you want to win back Crimea, and you don't care what it costs, and I'm not saying you personally, but I'm saying if that's the goal for Crimea, again, which is fine. I mean, Crimean people can decide what they want to do. The idea that not Korean, I'm sorry, pardon me, the Ukrainian people. I mean, it's the people also in in the contested areas. To me, there should be some kind of free, fair election. I understand that both sides claim that there can't be a free, fair election or that they would win and there's no need for a free, fair election. I don't know about that. But I do think that from that perspective of will the U.S. support Ukraine to try and defeat Russia and win back the territories, I agree. I think that Biden is better. Having said that, Biden could also collapse. Again, I'm not trying to speak for Ukrainians or Ukraine, but I'm still entitled to my opinion, right? So if I'm a Ukrainian, to me, the worst thing in the world is for Russia to break through that line of containment and take over half of Ukraine. And the NATO comes over the border and they come to some partition. And Russia says, hey, we're going to drop tactical nukes. And that's just that, unless we stop right here. And this is the new border. And you know what? They're going to stop. They're not going to let them use tactical nukes on NATO troops. They're not. I'm telling you, they are not. If that's Ukraine's plan, that if Russia breaks through, divisions of NATO guys are going to come in and beat Russia. That's a fantasy. Because he said, I believe him. Look, the fact that he hasn't used nuclear weapons to date is because he hasn't needed to. Because he's not going to go with an ICBM. Like he sends that clown Medvedev out. He says, oh, we're going to bomb New York and London. Oh, the mother bomb is going to come. And, and that's all bullshit and bluster. And I never believed that. But I'll tell you what I do believe. If you start taking over Crimea, he can use that tactical nuke to take the invasion off. And if he's winning and NATO comes in, he can use the threat of a tactical nuke to kill 100,000 NATO troops, which they're not going to want to do. They're not going to do it. They're not going to do it. If you think like, oh, they'll stand up to that blackmail and, they'll say, kill the 100,000, 100,000 Ukrainians have died. Now we'll kill 100,000 NATO. No, you won't, because to NATO, their lives are worth more. Okay. When a U.S. serviceman dies, the U.S. government goes crazy. But when 100 Palestinian kids die or 100 Israeli, the Israeli kids, what the Palestinians did on October 7th is terrible and inexcusable. But that doesn't mean that what the Israelis have responded hasn't been equally terrible and or not equally worse, more inexcusable. Because to leave 2 million people homeless with no real plan for the future for them, that's something out of what the Nazis did to the Jews. It's not quite as bad yet, but it's very close. And it's just not acceptable to me as a Jewish person, as an American, as a human being. Again, not saying that Hamas isn't a problem, but you don't solve that problem. This is not the way to solve it, in my opinion. And we can talk about something else, but that's my opinion.
With Ukraine, I think that a lot of people in the world are happy to live with evil as long as their personal safety isn't secured. But some people, and I would say myself, would rather die for principle, than let a country just be taken over by, Russia. If Russia used tactical nukes, then I say game on. Let's incinerate all the Russian troops in Ukraine. Because the only reason that Russia isn't bombed to a pulp right now by NATO is that because they have nukes. They did the same with Iraq, Belgrade. When a country invades another country, normally there's an international response, but basically the world is cowardly in the face of Putin. That's what it's like. But
no, I agree with you, man. I agree with you. I think that people are good to let other people's kids die. When we fought World War II in America, all the rich and in the UK, all the rich kids went and fought. Everybody went and fought. Okay, if you didn't fight, you were a coward. You were fighting for democracy and freedom, right? World War I, II. And now the idea that anyone would send their kid to fight, forget about them. I mean, there are people in Ukraine on both sides who are my age that are fighting. There's like people in their mid-50s fighting out there, who are sleeping in trenches, not getting enough food and water, shell shock, waiting to be killed by a drone. I feel for those people. I care about them.
It's a hellish environment. Hellish, man.
I don't have to know them. I don't need to know them personally. That's what empathy is that you feel for people that you don't know, when you have no interest, when you have no stake. But, one of the things that I wanted to talk about to change gears, because I think we could talk about the election and the wars and stuff, but I want to do some business stuff. I wanted to talk about something that I'm going to do a series on next week.
Just a minute, I want to get back to the WF, interesting point. Do you think the WF has more power than the Bilderberg Group?
Well, I think they're hand in glove. I think that a lot of members are both. I think that the aristocratic families of Europe that are the main part of Bilderberg are very progressive. Remember, if you're really rich and have a really cool lifestyle and everything's kind of going your way, you think the world's groovy. Like if you're having a tough time, fuck you. Do you have food? Are you sleeping outside? Do you have food? So what? You're stressed? You're supposed to be under stress. You got to hustle to make a meager living? Good. That's what you're supposed to do, right? Those people, to be honest, I'm not going to say it on camera how I feel those people should be treated. But, I don't have any tolerance for that. I benefit. Look, I'm a clever guy. I benefit from the system. I do. I mean, I have my own issues that you're aware of. But, in terms of material things and comfort and not worrying about how I'm going to pay my rent or what I'm going to use for money to eat. Yeah, it's fantastic. I don't worry about any of those things. Spending the winter in a beautiful house with a pool in Florida. I have a great apartment in the city. I mean, I need to make money for my son who goes to the University of Chicago. And, this is the serfdom thing. This is where, you're going to hear what I'm saying in the sense that you're going to empathize with what I'm saying. Is that when I came into the business world in the 90s, it was like an ecosystem where like there was a lot of different stripes of cat. Like it wasn't very conformist. Like if you were shrewd and you were a good business person, you could be an independent operator. Maybe not right out of college, but in a few years out. And you could make money and you could be an independent operator in almost any field. And you could make a good living at it. And what happened is the whole idea of being an independent operator, unless you're like, like someone super fancy, like Henry Kissinger with Kissinger Associates, or like some fancy judge who retires and becomes a lawyer or a management consultant or investment banker, or somebody that already was like a mega big shot. But people that were actually doing well but weren't mega big shots, they could always open their own shingle and make money. And what's happened is there is now such a pressure to be part of a company, to get a job and have a salary, to have a boss, bless you, to hopefully be a boss, right? That's what you want to do. You want to be in that food chain. You want to be in that corporate world. Bless you. God bless you. You want to manage up. You want to manage up and you want to manage down. You want to kiss some ass above you. Mwah. How it's supposed to be, man. And for me, you're willing to fight and die to stop the Russians. I could give a fuck. Pardon my language. I shouldn't curse so much. I don't care about that. I would fight and die to stop from living in a Hive corporate world, which is where we're heading. Okay. And my son is preparing for that. And he's brilliantly prepared. And he'll do very well if it happens. But I don't just care about my son. I care about the future of humanity. That's what being a humanitarian means. It means you care about everyone. And a lot of people say, oh, I'm a humanitarian. Bullshit. You're an egotist. You're an egotist parading around as a humanitarian, like someone like Bill Gates. Please. That guy's a clown. He sits there and he's like, oh, I'm helping humanity. Dude, you're just a reckless fool with too much money and too much time on his hands and too much of an ego. Okay, you were best friends with Jeffrey Epstein. You thought that was okay, and you weren't best friends with him like Trump was. way, way back in the day. You were best friends after he'd been to jail when everybody knew who he was and he'd been caught and shamed. And he went on the same game. He didn't play his game. And you don't think he got Bill Gates laid? You don't think that he came to Epstein's house and there weren't girls waiting for him? That's why his wife divorced him. I'm not saying girls, like, I don't care what we'll do. First of all, the idea that everyone slept with children is not true. Let's get that out of the way right now. Yes, they did get people sleeping with children, but they also got people sleeping with men and women of age, usually young, like maybe 20-year-old woman, like some 50-year-old guy who's married, sleeping with a 20-year-old woman or a 20-year-old man. That they love doing. They loved if you had like a gay fetish with a transsexual or a homosexual, oh, they want those pictures. Those pictures, they got you. Because that's what he did. There was an article about Epstein that he runs a control room. He had a control room in his house where someone could be in the booth and look at all the different cameras and figure out where the action was and, basically like make a movie.
So let's get on to the nice, exciting topic of serfdom.
So, in the last part, we talked about the WEF, right? So the WEF really is a place where leading politicians and leading business people come together and they basically say how great they are and how they should run everything and tell everybody what to do. And they're all part of this hive, and whatever they're told, they follow. So it's a corporate world, right? That's kind of a corporate structure where there's a CEO or a president or a head partner, and then there's layers of management, and then at the bottom are like the junior workers. And that's what a hive is. Everyone has a place in a strata, just like feudalism, right? I mean, you could be the king, you could be a duke, right? You could be the sheriff, right? There's different levels and you get different pay and different prestige, or you could just be a peasant who doesn't own the land, right? Like no one's going to own their own houses anymore, like our parents did. I mean, I did too. I mean, I owned a bunch of real estate. I did very well. I caught that wave, but they made it unaffordable to own real estate. That's called the financialization of everything. When they had ZERP, basically the system collapsed in '08 because without stimulation, both from the financial system, allowing for speculation and speculative profits, and from the government in terms of continually growing government spending and deficits, that there was no growth. And without growth, everything falls apart. Our whole economy is based on growth. Now, this growth can be bullshit. It can be the growth in cancer, right? But that's great because it provides a lot of jobs. And that makes corporations stronger. And that's what everything really is geared toward. And it's geared toward whatever excess wealth the system produces is kept by the owners. And as a worker, you're supposed to be part of the food chain and just be a happy peon. Now, if you're someone like me and you who don't want to do that, you say, hey, I'm a talented person. I want to be an independent operator. I mean, in the old days, they didn't care. You might be cheaper. They would say, why hire someone for $40,000 a year when I can use this guy for $20,000 a year and he'll give me the same thing? And then you could have the same amount of time and you could work for the other guy who also has the same thing. And you, as a part-timer, would eliminate 2 full-time jobs, right? That's capitalism. That's what it's supposed to be. No. What it's about is creating jobs. Creating jobs. That's all it's about. It's about creating jobs. And a lot of these entrepreneurs don't even want to make money. They're like, a lot of these people, like, they imagine that they're going to go public in a stock market and they'll make their money that way. But they're not. They're not. I mean, I was in the solar business for between 5 and 6 years. And I did one nice rooftop in a low-income project in Port Chester, New York, and Westchester. I was invited to make a proposal for Pace University, which had one of the nicest sites in the metro area for solar, both from a rooftop and from a parking lot perspective. And I teamed up with this company, UGE, in New York, which was the same company that I had closed the deal at Port Chester with. And they were a young company. They were a Toronto venture company, which meant they were public, but their market cap was like, it's basically a penny stock. And it was run by a young Canadian guy, maybe 10 years younger than me, who was, very peppy and a true believer in solar, and, and it's like Smurfs. he had like an army of international Smurfs. Like they're operating in New York. All these people from not from New York. No one was from New York. They were from South America. They were from the Midwest. They were from Asia, but no one was from New York but me. And that guy, I figure that's my niche. I'll bring them to New York sites because on their own, they're not going to have what we call in Yiddish the sekel, sort of like the local knowledge, common sense. They're not going to have that someone who's a native would have. Just like I wouldn't dream of going to, say, Colombia in South America, and I would, go to the natives to do a deal. I would have a Colombian partner, and I'd have him do the deal. These guys' English is better than my Spanish, so I guess, well, my Spanish could be good again. But so in the Pace deal, they were very aggressive, and the Smurfs, the Happy Smurf Village, they submitted a 3,000-page proposal with the addendums. And it must have taken them hundreds of man hours. They had a staff of like 25 people working. Crazy stuff. And in the end, we didn't win, not because we didn't have the best bid. We did, but they weren't felt to be qualified. So it was all a wild goose chase. And that's what a lot of modern jobs are, whether it's in the clean tech space, because I've seen all over clean tech. So many people have jobs where the amount of sales they actually do a year is just nothing. It's just nothing. But the businesses are funded by venture capital, by purpose-driven capital, by people who aren't thinking economically, who aren't practicing capitalism, which benefits me and you. It does benefit you. It does. You're a talented guy. It benefits you. You're not a corporate guy, but you're a talented maker. Okay. So it doesn't benefit you. Okay. And I'm a talented maker, and I don't want to be a corporate guy. Okay. And there's a whole legion of us out there who are getting screwed. And I like to get people together and say, we're not going to tolerate it. That this idea, because what it's wrapped up in is this legalist system where if you work together, you have to have every single possibility contracted out. And when you're looking at prospects, of which maybe 1 in 10 are going to come in, and it's going to be different every time, so the deal is going to look different. To try and do a one-size-fits-all contract that you both can agree on is impossible. And if you tried it, all you would do is not work together. So what a lawyer would say is that you shouldn't work together. If you can't get the right contract, don't work together. What I say is I trust my partner. I take his word for it. And if I have to sue him later, I sue him later. And that's sort of where I am now with these guys because, I introduced him to another partner I had named David Cox, the UG people. I don't need to mention their names particularly because I actually like those guys. They're not bad guys. I mean, I think the company at the top is looking at this the wrong way. But I'm not going to say that the people I work with there were bad people because I don't feel they were. And I don't feel this really is in their hands either. I think that basically they're told don't pay, there's no more money to pay anybody because these deals are thin because the solar business, you're working in an environment that's regulated by the government and with the utility. So they give you the playing field. You can only make so much money and you only have so much room of movement. And without the government's incentives, there would be no solar energy. So the government made incentives. And what happened was when Biden won, he created a lot of solar incentives that didn't exist when Trump was president. And even though New York State ended a lot of their programs, other parts of the country picked up. And one of them was Texas. So I had a Texas partner who I will name, whose name is David Cox, and he had a company called Go Big Solar. And I met him through a business associate I knew in Austin since 26, who was a very bright guy, but also sort of mentally ill and kind of crazy. And over time, our friendship and our working partnership ended. But with David, it sort of picked up. And with David, he came to New York. We were partners. We didn't partner every single thing, but we partnered on important deals together. And for me, I got us a deal in Texas that he was supposed to work on, that he got the Jones family that owns the Cowboys got involved somehow. And they just messed up the deal every time. We had the deal done. He had the deal done. And he wasn't a strong enough businessman. He got blown over and the deal never happened. And I forgave him. And then there was another deal that I got, which was in Puerto Rico, a very large deal to build a 30 megawatt which is like $50 million. So it's a big deal. Solar park in Saint Germain. And that was my deal. And I brought him into it. He was supposed to help find the funding and be the developer, and just nothing. All he brought to the party were other brokers and people that wanted to circumvent us. It was just, and because we were friends and had a relationship where he stayed in my house and I stayed in his house, it's being a nice guy. But in the end, I could have got that project probably done without him and made $400,000. But I was a nice guy. So then he had a project that he had worked on with the crazy guy that I met him through. And it was in Smithville, Texas. And I showed it to people in New York for him. And he knew he had to pay for that. And the economics weren't that great. And then he wanted to speak to UGE, who was my other partner. And I said, fine, and we talked about the Pace deal, which I don't know why he thought he could help, because he couldn't help at all. And we talked about what he was up to, which was his Texas deals, which was Smithville. And at the time, UG just wasn't interested in it. And then a year later, well, I'm still partners with these guys. Dave sends his buddy to meet with UGE on the project and cut me out. Okay. So these guys were partners that I'd worked on multiple deals with, that I'd worked with together on hundreds, not hundreds of thousands, but thousands of hours of work. And they did
so that's coherency. So one thing I always, when I make new relationships with people, especially if it's going to be business, it's good for things that to come up early, that we can have some friction to see how we deal with friction, because then you can see if there's coherency. And so you don't want to find out 3 years later that the guy's rubbish for doing business with. So
I was tolerant. You know what it is? I didn't think he was a good businessman, but he was like a sad guy. He was getting divorced. He has a child who has issues. And I just got sucked into it, And then as soon as he could screw me on a $6 million deal where I should have got made at least 100 grand or 50, some reasonable amount of money for all the time I put in with both these groups, they want to give me anything. And even when I was willing to settle for what I thought maybe, a quarter of what my service was worth, they didn't want to settle. So now I've got to sue them. And it's annoying, the fact I have to waste this time. And then I had other solar partners that I also got screwed by. Everyone I met in the solar business tried to screw me. Why? Because I didn't work for a company. Because anytime they could save money, because the business is so shitty, and it is, it's a crappy business. The only good part of the business were the people that got in early and built some of the big solar farms upstate, and upstate meaning anywhere in the United States where there's a lot of land. But now that business is sort of dried up, and it's very, very thin and very competitive. And if Trump wins the presidency, the solar business is finished. I mean, really finished. And all these solar developers, I don't know what the heck it is they're going to do, but they'll figure it out. But I do want to say, I want to plug, this is exciting, because, I spoke about Pramal and the technology we'd worked on, that it had a very exotic origin. And, and Pramal basically just wasn't able to make a deal. He was just someone that was also incompetent as a businessman, just like this guy is the other guy. I won't mention his name again because I don't want to sue me for slander, but these are kind of incompetent people. And, you get stuck with them, and it's a heartache. It's heartache. But what I got going now, and I got it with a friend from LinkedIn who was not a business friend. He was a friend from LinkedIn from another area. And he had this technology involving a motor. Now, an electric motor is old technology. And while it's been a little tweaked over the years, it's, I think it's over 100 years old, the technology that they still use today with some tweaks. So these two Swedish astrophysicists completely redesigned the electric motor to be capacitor-based. And a capacitor is a fancy way of balancing energy without a battery. It's sort of like a battery system without a battery. So it can't do everything a battery can do, but it can do simple power exchange, and they're cheap. So they have a capacitor-based engine, and the name of the company is called Taurus. And maybe I'll put up the PowerPoint in a couple of weeks. But, I have my two experts. My son calls them rainmakers. My son said to me, Dad, can you go out and find some rainmakers? So I answered, if you're watching this somewhere, Garrett, I do have rainmakers, and we're lucky enough to have a deal that they are helping me on. My good friends, Scott Franks and Chip Johnson, one involving with buildings, who's one of the leading building engineers in New York, one of the partners of the largest building engineering company, MEP engineering company in New York, and also doing work in places like Kuwait and, all types of very bespoke, custom, fancy work. And he's going to take us to a leading manufacturer of air conditioning. And we're going to see if we can do something to say, hey, we'll make one for you, then we'll make 100, then we'll make 10,000, then we'll make 10,000 a month. So that's interesting. And I think that's potentially revolutionary, because this electric engine can fit in anything, be it a plane, a car. I mean, I'm just looking at buildings and oil field equipment because I have the background in oil field services. So my friend Chip Johnson, who was the CEO of Carrizo, is going to help me there with people in the space that need downhill motors. Because what this motor does is that it can work at different RPMs, which the existing motor can't. So what happens with the existing motors, if the RPM shift, the motor breaks, right? Now, if it's something easy, now motors are cheap if you can get to them, right? But when you have a downhill tool that's in an oil well that's 15,000 feet under the surface, do you know how much money it costs to pull the whole drilling rig up and change the engine? The engine might cost $100 or $1,000, but to pull it up and down is $250,000.
Yikes.
Do you understand what I'm saying? So if you have something that doesn't break, that's a better mousetrap. So I'm really excited about that. That's kind of my main project. And the television show, in terms of, so I've completely changed and I'm so excited about it. I got involved with Hollywood and I spoke to I reached out to some old college friends who had made it super huge. Like all these guys are like top 100 people in Hollywood. And only one of them responded. And he was nice and liked the show, but the amount of help he was really willing to offer was limited. And the other two were not interested in helping at all, not even interested in speaking to me. And I was pretty friendly with both of them, Kyle. So
Why
I
do you think that
surmised,
is?
well,
Why do
because
you
they're
think
high and mighty. Because they're high and mighty. Because they don't care. Because they're living in their own little world. And you're coming to them with something out of the blue. And this is true with technology. If I didn't have these guys helping me, who were serious people who could get attention from big firms and from real firms, I couldn't do the lift. It's too heavy a lift on my own. We live in a society which is very closed. You need prestige and gravitas in order to get into certain conversations. It doesn't matter if you have the greatest things in sliced bread. No one cares. That's what people don't understand. I had this conversation with this Malaysian guy. He got kicked off of LinkedIn. I think he works for their intelligence service. And he likes to hear my opinion on things. And, I help from time to time, I'll chime in, but he's interesting to read. And he doesn't understand why Elon Musk doesn't just seed all these interesting technologies for $1 million. And I said, nothing, like I told you, I'm pro Elon now, but still, Elon's a businessman. He's got all these different companies. He's not looking for new technologies. And the ironic thing is I have a friend who, one of the companies I worked for when I was a banker, trying to get venture capital type deals for clean tech, advanced clean tech innovations. One of them was an anode on a battery, which is the energy gateway. And he figured out a way to make it 30% more efficient, which just revolutionizes the economy of the battery. And he was a fellow at the postdoctoral fellow at the Albany Nanotech Institute, which is where I met him. Now he's running a postdoc program for Cornell and the Hebrew University, or rather, I think not the other one, the one Technicon in Roosevelt Island in New York. And he invented this better anode. And all he could do with all his resources and all his gravitas was get it to a slightly bigger New York company that had a little bit more gravitas than him. And they're in a deal with Tesla now. And Tesla, as soon as Tesla bought the company, what did they talk about in the press release? The revolutionary anode, right? That was the headline that day. Now, the fact that was a headline, do you think that they're working on that quickly? Do you think that Elon Musk right now wants to redo his whole battery lines to add this new anode? Is that a high priority to him right now? No.
No.
How long is this going to happen? I mean, maybe it'll happen in a few years, I hope. Maybe someone's got a better anode out there now that I'm not aware of. There's other people trying too. But the point is, and this goes back to the Malaysian guy, they imagine that the world is looking for these new technologies. And the answer is the new technologies are everywhere. But the world is not looking for them. What the world is looking is to perpetuate the status quo. The reason why AI is getting so much money, and that's going back to the show. So I said that Hollywood was annoying. So then you would say, well, you must not think you'll ever get the show made. Or if you're going to get the show made, you're going to get it from some schlocky secondhand company. And the answer is no, man, I'm making the show with AI. And we're going to use all the real people's images, more or less, and we're going to change them and make them as I want them with, with the AI imaging. And we can basically create, I have the scripts written. So I have 10 scripts ready to go. So with the characters and the scripts, and with these new AI technologies like ChatGPT just introduced, where they can take a script and make it into a screenplay, that's very close to what I want to do. I don't want their vision of my screenplay. I want my vision. What I want is for the motion. So that the tricky parts are, how do you create motion, and how do you create the acting, the facial gestures, the hand gestures? Algorithms. How many movies and TV shows have been made? How many different ways can you walk into a bar, or, go to sit in a desk, or make love? I mean, all these movies have been made. We can just graft the character into the action with our sets. What are our sets? Our sets are all real places that we actually went to. So we don't need fake sets. We don't need actors and actors. We don't need a lighting department and a makeup department. We don't need the whole production. All we need is good software, our story, and some technical help. And I think within the next 12 to 18 months, this is all going to happen. I don't think we'll make all 10 episodes. Maybe I'll just make a promo, and we'll get started on the pilot.
I think you'll still need like human and a lot of human interference, because I've spent about 50 hours making images to try and make some interesting videos on YouTube, and I've got some interesting results. But it's very hard to have any context between scenes. So you'd have to, if you're going to, from what I see of the technology right now,
but if you use the
new,
make
a movie, but every scene, the character will look different.
It just came out. Have you used the new one? It came out like last week. The one that goes script to video. Script to video.
What?
Script to video.
Really?
ChatGPT 4. Oh yeah, it just came out last week.
No.
Try that and then tell me. Try that.
I'll make some videos
that close. I've seen it. It's amazing. I've seen the videos they make on it. It's amazing. It's amazing. No. It's amazing. It is amazing. Now, it's not what I want, because I don't want them imagining my show. I want to do my show. But I can work with them. But they can create the motion. They can do a lot. They can, in other words, I just want to program some of the variables. Like, I mean, and I want to, it's like, look, when you make a movie, where's the control, right? There's control in two places, right? One control is the director, right? The director is directing the action, right? With AI, you can be the director. You can direct the action. What else does the director do? He looks at different takes. He says, all right, try it there. Try it there. Let's see how it looks best. I can do that with AI. Okay. Then what's next? Editing.
But you won't have the precision of the camera being exactly there in that focus.
I think
that's spend longer doing that.
But I can steal that from other shows. I can get an algorithm that takes that with my characters and my background and just takes generic, that kind of thing. I believe I'm sure I can. Now, am I going to have to pay? For example, like I want to partner with Facebook. Why? Because Facebook has all the pictures. All Lizzie's pictures from all those years are in Facebook. Her other friends that were at the parties that we went to, their pictures are in Facebook. Who owns those pictures? Facebook. So if Facebook works with me and gives me those pictures, I can feed that all into the AI. Boom, 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 boom. What do I want the party to look like? I want it to look like this. Now, do I want the characters to look exactly like they are? No. Lizzie, yes. I mean, Lizzie, I've got a great avatar for. I haven't made mine yet. But most people on the show, we're just going to twerk them.
Is it like demand for AI-generated content in movies right now?
Yeah, no, I think it's going. Look, time is on. And the only thing time is on my side is this, right? My body's going to fall apart. I don't know what's going to get better, but I do know that the technology to go from script to AI and to edit and direct is just going to get better. I know it is. Will happen in 6 months or a year or 2 years, something like that.
But then again, that's when when digital workstations for music were very expensive, you had a lot less music. So it's easier to make music if you had the equipment. So now with this AI stuff, there's going to be a lot more content. So you're going to be
Yep.
washed out more with the amount of
I think my
no.
show is unbelievable. My show is fucking the best. I will go ahead. No, 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 no. Story, story, story. No, no, no. The best story will win. No, 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 no. And it's not just the
Okay.
story, but it's the script, right? So you just can't. Now, they have the software can actually write the script for you. I haven't played with that yet, where you can go script to story to script. I mean, I wrote my own scripts, but I think I know how to watch movies. I'm a movie aficionado, and I know what works on TV. What do we have? We have a very attractive heroine who everyone likes and is a huge hit on Facebook relative to who she is. Okay. We've got we've got settings, a beautiful penthouse in the city, in a beautiful building that's like magic, like Only Murders in the Building, but a nicer building. We've got a beautiful beach house in the Hamptons where her parents live, and her parents' beautiful apartment in Madison Avenue. Okay. We've got sexy New York clubs and restaurants. And then we've got funny shit. We've got funny characters. We've got funny stuff. And then the drama, as you know, kicks in over time. Like in the first year, it doesn't really get that dramatic till the last two episodes. And then the drama hits you. And then the final episode, boom, like a punch in the gut. We end it with a dramatic, and it happened in real life. You know, the name of the show is Lizzie's Real New York Story. All this stuff happened. That's why I think it's so great. I don't have to invent it. I mean, I do little fun things like I put a scene in where I mimic Saturday Night Fever dance contest. I have a scene in where I mimic Animal House's a modernized version of when they go to the jazz bar and the big guys come and say, "Do you mind if we dance with your dates?" So we've got that scene. I don't know if you watched Animal House, so we got some of that stuff. And like I steal stuff from The Shining a little bit. But no, it's a great story. And as the seasons, I have 9 seasons. I'm at the almost every season is good. And the cliffhangers, what happens, it's like a soap opera. It's funny, beautiful people, beautiful backgrounds. It's an easy sell. I think it'll work.
That's cool.
Now,
If it works, that's cool. What I would like to do is I have some ideas from some pretty interesting novels, but I just don't have the time to make the music and the artwork and all the stuff like that. So if I could generate even music and atmospheric stuff, I could actually get some put down to paper and what my mind's thinking about. That would be interesting.
well, like I said,
Um,
yeah, I respect it in my so what I'm gonna do, and I haven't done it yet, it's on my list of things to do, is I'm gonna go into Chat GPT and actually talk to it and explain to it what I'm trying to do and see what it says. Like I'm actually going to talk to ChatGPT like, hey, this is what I'm trying to do. This is what you do. You tell me. You know, how's the best way for me to work this? I can't negotiate a full deal with them, but they can get me to real people and tell me, it'll be fun. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to shock them because they don't expect the use of that. They don't expect me to come into them with this incredible business proposal. but uh, but no, I think the show will be great. I mean, look, do you have to get it picked up by Netflix? I mean, are we going to have to sell the show? In other words, do I think I can just throw this on YouTube and get like 1 million views? No. Maybe over time, maybe. But no, I want to make a deal with Netflix or Apple TV but we have to make it first. I got a mosquito passing by here.
you got some local fauna there.
Yes, we got things.
So going back a bit to serfdom again. So are you
So
finding that there's going to be
serfdom
a
is
clear
what I'm. So this is
separation
something
between
anti.
have
So
and
this
have
is
nots?
anti-serfdom. So this is anti, right? So the fact that anyone could be a creator. Liz has been playing with AI filters. That was Liz.
Uh-huh.
She's been playing with AI filters like crazy since she's like 3 days ago. She just got one. And now all she does is play with it and create images of herself in Paris on the beach. She has a great fun with it. Women love that stuff. And she posts it on Facebook and she gets 500 likes. But no, I think that we need distribution. Before, if I had to get a Hollywood production, it would have been difficult and we would have gotten a very low percentage. Now, I think we'll do pretty well. I mean, we'll still have to give a lot up to get the technology we need and to get it distributed. I mean, but we'll get a lot more than we would have done if we had to find a showrunner and have a bunch of stars or risk doing it with nobodies. And I don't have to
You
bother
know
with
my
that.
friend Colin Heaton and Michael Droberg. They're
Which
trying to
ones are
make
done?
movies. They're making movies, but they would need technology like this. So I'll connect you with
Yeah,
Patrick Kilpatrick
I
and those
love that.
guys.
Yeah,
And
I'll tell what I'm trying
once
to.
this
They'll tell
podcast
me
is
what.
done.
Yeah, definitely, that's fun. But the surf stuff, just if you want to try and come back to that, and I can tie it up to the first half too, where we talked about where we talked about the election and what's going on. So this sort of corporate mentality that I talk. And let me finish my story. So my solar story with UGE and Dave Cox is not only did he do the Texas deal, but then they hired him. He works with them now. So they should pay me as a headhunter. It's crazy. But now they play these games. They want to play a game where it's heads we win, tails you lose. And I'm like, no, it's both ways. Heads we all win, tails we all lose. No, I can't just be a loser. But that's what the surf world is. The surf world is getting a corporation, rise to the top, or getting a profession. And the professions they're squeezing. Like doctors don't make what they used to. Doctors are getting squeezed. Now, the top doctors do, yes, but not like the average rank and file doctor. And that's happening to lawyers too. I mean, the amount of inflation for lawyers. A lawyer at a top firm who's a partner will now bill like $2,700 an hour. And a regular partner at a nothing firm still bills $600 an hour, which is what they were billing 20 years ago. So their income isn't going up with expenses, but the regular lawyers, certainly the big time lawyers are, and that's true in the corporations. So what the corporations have done is they've said, listen, Surf, get a corporate job. Pretty soon you're going to make $100,000 a year. And your playing field is to stay at 100 and try and move to 200. Like that encompasses like 70% of the workforce 5 years out of school, 5 years out of college, in a corporation, in like a white collar job. Between you making probably 5 years out of school. Because I have all my guys, my Wesleyan football players, a lot of them are 5 years out of school now. I got a guy on Wall Street. He's probably making like 250, 300 already. But other guys are probably making 150 who are doing well, 100. And that's right. But they're going to find that when they're 40 and 50, the numbers are going to look the same and even be worse. That's what I'm seeing from my older friends. I've got another buddy, talking about surfs, okay? Went to college with me, was a Lehman Brothers investment banker, made a ton of money, got involved in a business afterwards that drained him of resources and wasted his time. And then he went back at my age, maybe he's a year younger, like say 55. He goes back to Wall Street, except he's working in London. And first they didn't pay him for 6 months. Now they pay him like he just got out of college. And to make ends meet, a buddy is letting him live in his shed for the winter. He's in London right now. He's living in an unheated shed. I mean, he emptied out the shed. I mean, I'm sure he made it nice. I'm sure it looks okay. But it's 30 degrees, London, it could be 30, 40, 30 degrees a night. Now he's got a space heater and a blanket and a sleeping bag. But come on, he's 55 years old. He was making $5 million a year in 2005. Okay? He's an educated guy. He's a smart guy. He's a smart guy. And let me tell you something. He made it happen. He worked hard to get back where he is. I have other friends. One went to Princeton and was like a big-time athlete who used to run Morgan Stanley's trading desk. And he's been trying for 10 years, 15 years to get a job back on Wall Street. Nothing. So what's happening is that when you're young and you're in the corporate system, if you're a certain type of person, that you need to come in. And then over 10 years, they sort of sort you out. And if you're on like a real management track where you're going to be like a real big shot, then you can make more money, over 200,000. And even then they cap it. Like when I was in the 90s, people made 500,000, $1 million, like it was no big deal. Nothing. 5 million, 5. Things were cheaper. You could buy a nice house for 200 grand back then. And they've completely changed the playing field. Well, now that same house that was 200 grand is $1 million in the United States. It's $1 million if it's in most areas, or 850 from 1990.
What's that guy doing if he earned all that much money? Like you said, how did he blow all that money so that he has to live in a shed in London if he was earning millions?
I mean, you know what? You pay taxes, and he put it in a business. He invested in a business, and plus, you don't make money over a lot of years. You have to live. He may have some money left over. No one said he's on his last dime. He may have his nut. He may have his. No, he's having a good time with it. I mean, I don't think he's suffering. I mean, I think he's rugged and he's handling it. But like I said, my other friend would probably do that. He's a little older now, and he was a Morgan Stanley head trader. He's been dying to anything to get back on Wall Street. And it's just a one-way shoot, and that's what the corporate world is. It's basically a shot from 20s to your 30s. By the time you're 40, you're sorted out. And if you're not going places, by the time you're 50, you're fucked. And the days when you could be a freelancer and make money and use your knowledge We just talked about that. Now they're going to screw you. Because what they do is if you really want a really firm contract, okay, where every single thing is going to be covered, they're not going to sign that with you. Okay. If you're going to sign a contract, they're going to want to sign it their way. And, I'm going to go to court and I'm going to find out, what the law, what I think I have to be paid. I have a MOU. I've got a contract that covers this in my mind. Now, what's going to happen in court? I mean, we'll see. I mean, these guys are crazy to take this chance because they're going to spend a lot of money on lawyers. And I won't have to because I can do it with contingency. But whatever. But that's the serf mentality. The serf mentality is everything's more expensive and you're not going to make any more. Matter of fact, you know what? You may make less. You'll have less. You shouldn't. What you have now, you're lucky to have. You'll have less and you'll.
These elites are basically enjoying our suffering.
Elites. Oh, these elites.
They take pleasure
That's
from
what
like,
I would
our
die
suffering.
for. See, fuck the Russians. Pardon my case. Putin, he means nothing to me. I understand he means something to Ukraine. I understand. And I know it's important. I'm not trying to diminish the Ukrainian value. But as an American, if you say to me, does Putin affect your life? Biden says, oh, NATO will have to fight him next. I mean, okay, no, but that's okay. Okay. But if you say to me, well, what does affect your life? The WEF and that corporate mentality that there's going to be an elite that's going to live like gods, because that's where this all started. Where do you think the gods came from? Now, I understand not Jehovah, not our God. I'm not saying that all gods come from that. But most gods the world over came from like big shots. They were big shots. Look, the pharaohs, the Sumerian leaders, they were gods. They said, listen, I'm not just a king, I'm a god, which means I'm better than you. I made you, even if it's bullshit, because they're liars, right? They can believe any lie. Like, have they ever said COVID? Have they ever said, wait a minute, we started this disease. We did it stupidly in China. Carelessly, it was released. Overreaction, we overprepared. We overreacted. The shots weren't really ready and weren't necessary by most of the population. Have they ever said anything that they're wrong, that they made mistakes? No, because they're never wrong, because they'd rather lie and change the truth. The Japanese, they put a sword in their stomach, okay? That's what Americans used to do. If you lied like that, someone would challenge you to a duel and shoot you and kill you. Okay, but now we live in a passive-aggressive world where it's all about, we'll go to lawyers, we'll go to courts. That's how you handle it. No, that's not how you handle it, man. And Donald Trump is coming to town, and the court system is trying to bury him, and he is going to bury it. You watch. And when he does, forget about my team winning the Super Bowl. Oh, I'm rooting for the Giants. Oh, I'm so happy the Giants won. Who fucking cares? The Giants won. Big deal. Wait a minute. They've overthrown the lawyers. We're going to have a system that's based on real justice, supervised by AI, and not by lawyers privileging themselves and judges. Yeah. Yeah. That's when I'll jump around and scream and bat my chest. I don't care who wins a fucking football game or a basketball game or who wins the Oscar. I mean, that's what they want me to care about. That's what they want you to care about. But that's not what we care about. What we care about is our lives, not some fantasy, not living vicariously, okay, but living in our own skin, our own lives, and being treated fairly and with dignity, and being allowed to make a living and have a family and own a home, okay? That's basic human rights. I stand for that right for all human beings. But what I stand for first is in my own country. And when I see it being taken away from my own country, that's where I get mad. That's when my blood pressure goes to the moon. And I'm living great. Okay. Yeah, I'm suing these guys. I don't need the money. I mean, I need it for my son because he's in college, but he's doing crossword puzzles in the New York Times. He must be getting rich. He doesn't need his dad anymore. I'm kidding, because the crossword puzzles, you'd be surprised, they don't pay that well. You'd think if you did a Sunday puzzle for the Times, which is one of the most biggest honors, that you'd get like, I don't know, 10 grand or something for it, 15 grand. You get like $1,500. I mean, it takes you like 100 hours of work. You got to compete against 100 other people, and you win this tiny prize. But that's journalism. That's the journalism model. Journalism has become Surf City. Unless you're a celebrity journalist, you're not making any money. You're getting fired.
Tell me a bit more about that show you've been working on, 87 episodes or something.
So the show, originally we wanted like an all-star cast. And, it's sort of a combination of Seinfeld and a little bit of Sex in the City. And it has like a little bit of like well, I don't want to give away some of the plot, but there's a lot about like Gen X, which is, I'm sort of the vanguard of Gen X, right? And Liz is a few years younger than me. So we're like old Gen Xers. And our parents are just before the baby boom. They're like war babies. Like my father was born in Poland during the Blitzkrieg. Well, it's now Ukraine, who was then Poland. And his father was born in Odessa, which was then Russia. And they were Russian citizens living in Poland. And that's not part of the show at all. I don't want to confuse anybody. But the generation, when the show starts, okay, so we're on season 9, we're on episode 87. And all the seasons are good, and all the episodes are pretty good. I mean, it doesn't mean that life's always exciting. It means that when you cut out the boring parts, life's always exciting. It's not a reality show. And I originally wanted to do it with a real cast, but in the meantime, the AI technology has gotten so good. Lizzie looks fantastic on AI. The idea that I want an actress to play her, no way. Let Lizzie play herself. Now, does that mean she's going to be the actress? No, Lizzie's not an actress. But do I think like the motions and the gestures and the facial, do I think an AI algorithm, we can pick all that shit up? Absolutely. Sure we can. I know we can. Can we do it this second? I bet we could if we had the right software. But even if we can't do it today, in a year, they'll be doing it. It's not far away. It's close. It's the end of the world. Look, Natalie Portman is one of the biggest stars in Hollywood. And she's one of the smartest people in Hollywood. Like she went to Harvard and, took a real course load, and she's a very smart woman. She just said this week that AI is going to replace her.
What?
She said AI is going to replace us. Now, I don't think she means like she'll never work again. I don't think that's what she means, but she thinks that the traditional movie making is living on borrowed time. I think that's what she means. I'm sure I could read more into it, but I'm pretty sure that's what she means.
Tom Cruise wouldn't agree with that, though. He just loves everything not AI. Everything is realistic.
I heard some crazy stuff about Scientologists today. I don't even want to go into that. I think that's fast. I mean,
like what?
Mormons and Scientologists are very powerful in the United States, and they both have very different perspectives and very unique ones. And they're both very American religions. It's like, all the Old Testament and the New Testament and Islam all come from, that region in a short period. I mean, the Jewish religion pretends that it's thousands of years older than Christianity, but it's not. It's 600 years older. That's how old it is. Judaism really was founded when King Cyrus sent the Israelites back from bondage in Babylon and built the temple. But Cyrus did that for a reason, like he created the religion, just like Rome created, to a large extent, Christianity.
So if that's Judaism, what do you call like all the Old Testament stuff? Abraham, King David, Solomon.
Well, that's wisdom literature. That stuff, those are like the remember, okay, so go back to Abraham. So Abraham became a priest after he was blessed by Melchizedek. So if you look at the genealogy of the Old Testament and where Abraham stands, I forget how many years from creation he is, or how many years from the flood, right? Because remember, the original people lived like 1,000 years. So like the first people, Adam's years were 1,250, and Cain lived 1,500. I mean, Cain is one of the most important historical figures. There was definitely a Cain, and that's where the word king comes from, right? Cain, Czar, king. Cain, Canaanites, the Canaanites. Wait, I heard that name, the Canaanites. They lived in Canaan. So Cain's an important person for sure. And the story of Cain and Abel is a very important story. And the story of Seth. The story of Seth's like the forgotten forefather. Like, that's where you either descended from Cain or you descended from Seth. The Jewish people see themselves as descended from Seth. Whether that's true or not, I don't know, but that's the mythology, right? So then you've got Seth. So he's supposed to be, Cain is a real person. Seth is a real person. When do these people live? Well, if we take the Moses story, which we would know is pretty much just a story, it's not, it may be a content, as Freud thought, but there certainly was no historical Moses, like the story says. It's basically got something created out of, myths and legends, and some of that could be based on truth. I don't know.
No,
But
I think I take it literal, because if you can't take the Bible literally, then you can't believe it, trust it at all. So either you have to
well,
believe it.
but I think, yeah, I trust the creators of the Bible to a certain extent. I don't trust them 100%, but I trust that they were trying to communicate something on different levels for different people that was at a very high level. And what they did is fantastic. What they did is fantastic. Just to finish the Bible thing, because before we go, because we can't leave the cliffhanger, right? So Moses is 1650 BC, right? So if you look from Moses to the flood seems like around, like, I think there was a flood. They basically found another flood. I think like 20. My God, it just started to rain. I said flood, and it's just started to pour. How amazing is that? Look at this.
That's
How
beautiful,
cool.
man. What in the world?
It was sunny
Living
a
the
minute
dream.
ago. I got to run for cover. Hold on. So anyway, I think they're saying there was a flood in around 2500 BC or 2800 BC. So that's no, right? So then you go back to Adam. You're looking at around 4000. You're looking at around 4000 BC, 6000. And supposedly they just found a die off. They just found a bottleneck event last week. They just found that the males were basically killed. That there was a genetic bottleneck um, in basically like 6,000 years ago. So everything's starting to add up. Like, even if you can't say that we know nothing is not true, because archaeology and geology are real, right? Like, I don't believe that those things. Like, I'm not anti-science. I'm anti-scientism, which makes it a religion. But to use the scientific method to learn about our history, to me, that's extraordinarily exciting. And the Israelis have done a fantastic job of this in the Holy Land. But anyway, like some other time we'll do that good stuff. But it was great talking to you, Nikos, and
You too, man.
hopefully we'll chat again soon. Thank you, man.
Thank you, brother. Catch you later. And
Yep.
thanks everybody watching the podcast. See you all
Thanks,
later
guys.
soon. Bye.
Bye bye.